Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Berlin Select Board meeting for Monday, February 6th, 2023. It is 7 o'clock. As a reminder, meetings of the Berlin Select Board are generally recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Access channel and for YouTube, that your voice and your image and your telephone number may be recorded. It is 7 o'clock, or actually it's 7:01. Oh my goodness. Let's call the meeting to order, and we will start with the approval of the minutes. I will be followed by public comment. And so if you're in the audience and have a comment to make, you can raise your hand and we will recognize you after we deal with the minutes.
Kristen and Mary, did you receive my comment on the minutes?
I am looking now.
I think it was just to add something at the bottom about what we agreed to have you look into with Maplewood.
Oh, okay. We can fix that.
Just because we sort of let go of it and said that you were going to look into a couple of things, whether it was with DEP and then just get back to us.
Sure. Right, and talk to Weston and Sampson. And yep, absolutely. We'll fix that.
Do you want to still approve them, Scott, or?
I believe you can approve them as amended. I believe the amendments are being made in real time for those of us who are online, but that your sentence to reach out to gather more information for Maplewood Farm, Weston and Sampson, Mass GMP, and return back to the board. And what I will do is, while we're voting on that, I will pull up a future meeting agenda and just make sure there's a notice to follow up again on Maplewood Farms, which might have already been done, but I'll make sure that's done.
Okay.
So with that addendum, are we okay to pass the minutes?
Sure. I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
That probably means we're okay to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.
Adding that to as a note for the February 27th agenda so that we don't forget about these things. As a reminder, we're at general public comment. If you're in the audience and have comments to make, you can raise your hand. I don't see that anyone did from the earlier request. And so we have, I don't know if we even have people in the audience for the, I'm looking at the January 20th, the February 27th agenda now. People in the audience for the veteran services update. You see him yet? No. And so Kristen, why don't you start your town administrator report and we can ask questions and we'll cycle back to Brian if he makes it.
All right. So we continue on with the budget, and I think we're getting really close. We've done a lot with FinCom as well, and they are holding off at this time voting on the big three, that being police, fire, and highway, until we get the schools squared away. Just because we're not sure exactly, what's going on in that regard. So we also have, hold on, did I put this in the wrong folder? Where did it go?
I didn't see one.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the folder, even I checked this afternoon too.
That's really weird because I dragged it over on Friday. And now I can't see it in there. Did I put it on the 13th by mistake? That is entirely possible.
Because it's also not available via the website either, which is usually a copy of it, not the original.
Yeah, that is really weird. I apologize about that. I know I dragged it over on Friday. And of course,
Not in the 13th either.
Yeah, okay, my apologies. I'm not sure what happened on that one. So basically, we got a really great price. I think we were talking about the audit last time, and we got a great price on the audit from Roselli and Associates. It's going to be, if we lock in for 3 years, $20,000, going up $500 a year for 3 years. Our existing audit firm came in at 37,000, which we've only budgeted for 26. So this is actually for FY23, 22 rather. So if we lock in for 23, 24, and 25, that would take care of it at a much substantially less price. And I think it makes sense to go with them. We also have been working with Personnel Committee. You'll see later on tonight. We talked about some job descriptions. We got the conservation job description that we talked about finalized, as well as the, what was the other one that we did? We did conservation agent, which had been a temporary one, and library director. We made some amendments. We have working on posting that library director job posting internally for 10 days. And then if there are no internal candidates, we will go external. Bob Hodges, you know, is retiring at the end of April. So we're trying to get a move on that. As far as procurement goes, I mentioned the audit. We also have the cable meeting room, hybrid and HD upgrades out. We've gotten about, I believe, 4 responses for that so far. And I was able to get the highway materials bid IFB out last week. So those will be due February 27th. Got those in the central register. They're available starting Wednesday. So just getting those, the finishing touches put on that IFB and getting it ready for it to go out Wednesday. So finally starting to get moving forward with some of those procurements, which is really good now that kind of the bulk work on the budget is done. Trying to think what else. That is so weird. I don't know where I put that because I definitely remember putting it in the folder. Driving me nuts, but I will send it out to everybody by email shortly, tomorrow morning, because I can't get on the shared drive. My VPN is still being spotty and not working. Trying to think what else we have going on right now. Those are kind of the big things with the procurements and the budget. I do have on the schedule, and Scott and I talked a little bit about this for the next meeting, a joint meeting with FinCom and the select board to discuss progress made on the budget. So that's a short meeting according to the budget calendar that you have happen every year. So I have to figure that out because the FinCom chair, I think, has a conflict, but it looks like he'll send someone in his stead, and we'll determine that at the meeting on Wednesday. And I think that's about it for the big things. Does anyone have any questions?
So is the FinCom and the select board meeting next Monday?
It's the 13th. Yep.
Okay.
That is next Monday already. My
Yep.
goodness.
Kristen, is to your report, you had some assets or vehicles you wanted to dispose of? Am I remembering that correctly?
I have that on for next week. But it's a vehicle that's over $10,000, so it does require select board approval. I can tell you it's the police chief's car. He had it appraised at $13,000 from Colonial. And rather than buy a brand new one for the schools, they were willing to purchase his vehicle at that price, which I thought made sense because that saves us on the back end as well. And I met with facilities director Dan Ayala on Friday, as well as Chief Shartner, to have that conversation. So, but that will be a decision for the board next Monday.
Peg, you have questions?
Nope.
Oh, when our meetings line up to be lighter meetings, they really line up to be lighter meetings, don't they? I think that can take us to then old business. We want to jump into budget discussion and votes.
Okay. So let me just pull that up. Hopefully that one made it in there. Let's see. Oh, good. That one made it in there. Thank goodness. So nothing radically changing on the revenue side, still waiting for information from the state. March is ironically or very quickly around the corner. So we should have some more information at that time. One of the things that I'm going to be doing, we have very few budget lines that haven't been discussed at the select board level yet. I have a couple for you that we can talk about, but they're very, very small. So I'm just pulling up my screen here to share with you, as you guys have already talked about the big ones for the most part. Let's see. Hold on here. And just let me share.
Yeah. I would see like 4 lines for tonight if I understand the color.
Yeah, there's just a few, and there are still a couple outstanding that we need to discuss a little bit further.
Mhm.
One of the ones on the first page that's in red, the reason it's not for you tonight is there is a supplemental funding request from the assessor's office for some additional funding to train the incoming assessor, but we haven't received an official retirement date yet from the assessor. So I did not want to necessarily include that funding. She believes she's going to have some more information shortly. So once we get that, I think I can make a recommendation and we can discuss that a little bit further.
Yeah.
Data
That
system.
to me
Okay.
falls under that sort of reserve fund transfer if you don't know what fiscal year it's really going to fall into. Because I don't like, I worry some of these 1-year ones. What happens is next year they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to zero, we're going to flat fund, but flat funding is, we gave you one-time money last year. I like one-time money generally coming out of reserves just so we don't accidentally permanently increase some line item.
Right, and I
Just
agree.
the
And
opinion.
the reason I pulled it out as a supplemental funding request is also so you can do just that. When I go through and look at the 25 budget, I would pull out any supplemental funding requests that were 1 year. But I agree with you on the reserve fund, because if she's going to retire in 23, then obviously this shouldn't go in the 24 budget. And that's why I didn't initially recommend it, because things were too up in the air. Data systems. So we have a cybersecurity policy that we pay for through Maya, and they are now requiring this lovely thing called EDR, which Scott can probably explain a whole lot better than me. It's basically like an endpoint verification where they're constantly checking computers, tablets, anything connected for malicious activity. And it is now a requirement in order to renew our cybersecurity insurance for 24 that we have this, and Maya literally just came out with the application. I reached out to CM Geeks. They can do it if we lock in for 3 years at $7,488 per year. So that obviously impacts the data systems budget by that much. I don't.
And I can tell you this is just the beginning.
Is this,
Yeah.
At my office, we had several new things we had to do that definitely increased security. I question like the return on investment versus it. But not only that, even by doing that, our policy still went up by 30 to 40%. And so we're paying a lot more, because what's happening is the cost of a ransomware attack is getting more and more expensive to recover from.
Yeah.
And so because insurance companies are paying out more and because losses are larger, they make that up by adding more requirements to make sure you're less juicy of a target, and that you pay more for it.
so
Right.
is this included in this line item or not?
So now it is included. It would require a revote, because it does
Right.
up that line item by another $7,000, meaning you're upping the entire budget by $16,432 or 18.9%.
The increase is for endpoint protection as opposed to an increase for the cost of insurance, or is both of those in there?
So this is just for the endpoint protection. We have been told that we're level funded on insurance for this year through Maya. Until I'm told differently, my
Yeah.
understanding is they're making us do this so that they
Yeah.
don't raise the cost of insurance. But that is a large cost, obviously, in and of itself.
Yes.
Well, and there's no choice, correct?
Unfortunately not. And CM Geek said this was the best price they could do, and we would need to lock in for 3 years.
My professional curiosity more for my professional job as opposed to my select board hat, but do you know what endpoint protection they're planning on going with?
I do not, but I can certainly find out and
Yeah,
shoot you an
send it to
email.
me outside, send me outside the meeting. This is
Sure
one of the
thing.
things, areas that I, as my sort of penny pinching New Englander, like all the stuff we do for security and what the return is versus the risk levels. And it's also I just did a training today, a really secure computer has no keyboard, mouse, power, internet connection, no monitor, is locked in the closet. That's really secure. But that's also not very usable. And so the more you add security, less usable you make something. And how do you find that risk tolerance of like how much, and frankly, risk tolerance is something probably the select board at some point should be thinking about, is like, how much risk are we willing to take for how much money? Now, obviously, like we could decide we don't do endpoint protection, we just don't have cyber insurance, and we just like live with anything that happens. I think that might be way riskier than we want, but it would be cheaper up until the day we get an actual attack and spend millions of dollars to recover. Because recovery from these things is expensive.
It is. And I mean, it's happening to people on a personal level. It's obviously far more devastating. I shouldn't say far more devastating. It's often more devastating on a company-wide level. I can tell you, we had a situation, and this is probably about, gosh, now it's going back almost 8 years in my former community, where they came and they locked down all the passwords. And back then, there wasn't a lot of the sophistication we have now. And the town, I think, ended up paying $800 because it was cheaper to pay to have them unlock everything than to try to go through and have a company come in, assess it, and unlock everything. And I mean, they're getting worse with their demands. So.
Yeah, and not that I want to answer in a public forum, because you never know who watches playbacks. But at some point, Kristen, maybe you could just shoot something out on how often the system is backed up. And I'm going to assume everything is going up to the cloud, but just to get an idea of what CM Geeks is doing to protect everything, so we don't get,
Right.
we locked your system down, pay us $1 bazillion, you're not getting anything back until you do.
Right.
Yep.
Actually, it's a
talk-
business continuity plan or a written
Yeah.
information security plan are the two formal type documents that most agencies should have, type of stuff. And they do pick ransom amounts, which are usually enough to be painful, but not so much that you're willing to toss all your stuff or pay an expert to come in. And the reason they keep doing it is that people pay the ransoms, and they're making millions of dollars for their criminal activities because people pay the ransoms.
Right. Yep. So I made a note of that, and I'll get that information out to you.
Do you want to
Scroll
approve
up
the
and
line
down on the
item,
screen.
Scott? Do you want to approve the
Yes.
line item?
Yeah, we were going page by page. It is I think we'll do line by line tonight because I think there's only 4 of them. So
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the data systems expenses, line 27.
Seconded.
I think we're in good shape to vote. Then Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Don't I?
All right. So, and I know you actually had voted on town clerk. The reason that is back in the red is when Ellie was before the FinCom, she had mentioned the possibility of also needing some training funding. And the FinCom asked me to sit down with her and work out a supplemental funding plan with her. So I will be doing that. And that is why that is back in red. Conservation, we're still working on. Let's see, what else do we have? Nothing on page 2. So page 3, FinCom had a really interesting idea that they voted on. The wheat, I get, it's not really a grant, but it's sort of an assessment from the community social services line item, has been $4,000 and is level funded. That budget was increased to $7,000 a few years ago, but it hasn't actually been used. And what they wanted to do was take $3,000 from that line item to help offset the increase in Victoria's line item so that she could have an expense budget for social services. That was the way they voted on it there. So that basically, oh, go ahead.
The added 3,000 is from me, who wanted to start putting together a fund or a way to help people in town
Okay.
through various things. And so I, as the person who pushed for that $3,000, I believe what you're suggesting meets entirely what I would love to have had happened, and actually in a mechanism that will actually allow it to happen. And so I think that is a really great thing.
Okay. So that will help offset if you go up to line item 83. Victoria asked basically for an additional $2,855 in her expense budget because she does not currently have one for social services. Any questions?
My intent had hoped to find a way that in the town where that helping someone with a $50 heating bill or a small grocery bill goes a long way sometimes, because once you're homeless or once you're behind in the bills, all those fees eat up. There wasn't a great way to ever do it. And again, her expenses, that the thing she does is just incredible. And so, yes, helping her is great.
Great.
Do you want to make your motion, Chris?
I'll make a motion to approve the community social services line number 87.
Seconded.
Again, I think we're ready to vote. So Hawkins, aye.
EFI.
Stone Eye.
Okay. And then I don't know if it was the select board, the FinCom, or both, that sent me back to do some research on the library wages. The Board of Trustees have met, they've done some research, and they are offering a range on the classification and compensation plan that is consistent with the current salary of the library director budget. It basically includes steps 1 through 8 on the class and comp plan, and the new hiree would fall somewhere within that range. Bob is currently at a step 8, so the projected budget would cover that salary.
What is the range between what and what?
It is, I believe, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think I have it up on the website.
137, like the top end?
So, oh no, that's everybody's wages
That's everyone.
for the whole library. So
Part-time. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. Hold on a second. I can give you that number. Let me just get it
I
off.
just wondered if he was right now in the right area of his salary for surrounding towns and whatnot.
Yeah, so I will tell you, it is on the lower end. It is within the range. That step, according to the HRS study, it is a bit on the lower end, but there are communities that are lower than us. And so it's because he's not full-time either. He's 33 hours a week. So that's part of the reason, you know, you have to kind of do an apples to apples comparison when you look at that. I'm just trying to pull that up here.
And are they looking for someone for 33 hours also, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's get this. Hold on 1 second. Library director. It's always when you want to find something that you can never find it quickly. Okay. So it's a grade 10 position. The range would be 32 to 39 per hour. Plus change.
Okay.
Let me share my
Yeah.
budget back up again with you folks.
Although I think this line item is in the realm of library board to sort of approve or not approve, but we're fine to have an opinion on it if we'd like. Would you like to make a motion, Chris?
I don't have it in front of me now because she's not sharing.
I'm sharing. Hold on. I'm going back to it. There we go.
Okay. We did community social services, correct?
Yep.
Okay, then I will make a motion to approve library wages part-time, number 88.
Okay.
Seconded.
I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Okay. And the last one is the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, which I had estimated a 5% increase over last year's budget. Turned out it was only a 2.5% increase. So that line item went down by $25. So we finally did get our assessments for CMRPC. So that assessment is $974. And I will tell you, we get, they call DLTA funds, which is local technical assistance that the planning board uses for a variety of things. It's kind of the best bang for your buck around.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of use out of it. I think they're a great partner for our town
Yeah.
a 2.5% increase when that's generally what we've asked for is nice to see.
So I can make a motion to approve the CMRPC line item number 97.
Great.
All right. I wasn't sure if she was gonna continue or not, so I hesitated. Second,
I wasn't sure either.
Ready about Hawkins, aye?
Keith, bye.
don't I?
So before you take this down, Kristen,
Yes.
I know I had spoken to you, well, I don't know, last week or something about how we did our landscaping around the municipal building this last year.
Yes.
And if there was a line for that, if that was buildings.
Yeah,
Or-
I did talk to Fred. So we had money left over that, as I suspected, from that parking lot project that allowed us to do some landscaping over at the town offices. He does not currently have funding in the budget for landscaping. And he was questioning it. He said that we've not done the schools before now.
Correct.
So I don't know, and that would be, so I'd have to look into kind of where we were at. There's not a lease, which is interesting, but typically when a school takes over a property, this is like the Hearst House, that sort of care, custody, and control. Like, do we do their plowing and everything for them? I mean, are we responsible for maintenance to the building?
We're responsible for mowing.
Well, we are responsible for mowing. Oh, okay, so that's where the landscaping piece
Yeah.
might come in. So there wasn't money in the budget for that. If the board would like, I can certainly look into that and see if I can get a price for what that cost would be. Should we have some additional, funding that we could put towards that?
And we don't have it included in the lease either that we're working on.
It's not, okay. I haven't had a chance to go through the lease, so, okay, that's good to know. That would fall on our responsibility like the mowing then.
Most likely.
Okay,
And it may not be something that's expensive. I mean, you maybe start off the first year with just trimming back some trees or bushes or whatever. It's-
Did
okay.
these ever get done? I know there was some question, it was started, kind of dropped. Margaret left, not quite sure where it went. I don't remember ever seeing a finalized lease agreement.
Nope,
No.
it's not done. It's on the list, so.
I have a copy too, and this was just one of the things that I was thinking that, is it going to be included in the lease or is it not going to be included and we're going to take care of it?
Well, and I think that's a great question. And what I can do too, is let me pull up the lease. It's, time we need to address that as well. And take a look at what exactly is in there with regard to those types of items. And now we have, Carol is the interim superintendent, but she will be the permanent superintendent, I understand, in June. So I don't know if she has seen the lease before. So even if it's not final, I could at least get it over to her and start that conversation.
I think Margaret was working with the then finance director who's
Oh, and she's too.
and so you might want to
Okay.
like send a copy to, what is it, Nancy?
Yep. So Nancy and Carol.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Get
just
all
see where
rolling.
they're at with it, or if they have comments. I think they may even have new counsel too. I believe they changed
Okay.
their counsel who was helping it originally.
Okay. So even if it's not fully finalized on our end, at least it can get that dialogue started. I'll send that over.
Right. So we get that, what is it, $1?
Yeah, which nobody ever actually exchanges. I, could frame it somewhere maybe.
Right.
All right.
to get charged $1 and then next year cut it to 50 cents. So we can say we've cut their budget, they've cut their rent by 50% and they should thus be able to stay within a 2.5%.
Oh, we still pay rent, Scott. We pay rent for the central office.
Yeah. Right.
Do you want me to do anything else on the budget or?
No, if there's no other questions tonight, I think we can go on to the next item.
Okay. Try something. All right. Let's see where we're at. So personnel policy. FinCom, my goodness, too many different meetings. Personnel did take a look. I know there were some questions that had been raised on the personnel policies, and they went through them at their meeting last Wednesday, and the final policy is there in the drive. I'm just getting to it myself here.
The grow up page, I remember it being 108 pages and now it's 109. Maybe I just memorized the wrong.
Did it go? I thought it was 108 too. How did it get to 109? So they actually did not make an, oh, the last page, that's weird. Why does it say 109, but it stops on page 108?
Yes.
That's really interesting. I don't know
It
if that's
is.
something that happened when I PDF'd it again.
Yeah.
Strange.
Anyway,
So
okay.
I thought I just pulled the one over from the last meeting because they
Yep.
did make specific changes, but I will fix that.
Mhm.
Personnel policy. So basically what the next steps would be is if the board wants to move forward with this, it would go to legal counsel for review to make sure everything conforms with federal, state policies and our local bylaws. And then it would be something that we could, if there's changes, obviously we want to bring it back. These are the personnel policies, but ultimately, you know, they are the select board and the town administrator are the ultimate, you know, bodies responsible for implementing these policies with the guidance of the personnel committee. So very important to make sure that everybody's on the same page with regard to those.
So are you looking for a motion to approve in order to send to council?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make that motion. Conversation?
Yeah. Because so I at least make sure it's seconded so we have guards. Are there sort of questions or comments about any of the sort of policies in here?
The only question I had, Kristen, can you, and I think that you answered it in your email, but when I see appointed, to me, that means volunteer. And throughout the document, it made references to checks and training and things like that. So I'm just curious if you could define how appointed is defined in this document. Other
Sure.
if they, you know, if personnel went through it and they didn't have any questions, which I did not hear any follow-up clarification questions, and I'm fine, but just for my own edification, just wondering how appointed is defined.
Okay.
What's the title of the document? Isn't it employee handbook? Or
It's called Personnel Policy
Personnel
Manual.
policy.
Okay,
Right. So it's and this is interesting because it has gone back and forth. I've seen it called a personnel policy manual. I've seen it called an employee policy manual. Maybe that's where some of the confusion is coming in. It really is an employee or personnel, basically in this sense would refer to employees or appointed employees. There are appointed employees and elected employees. There are appointed officials and elected officials. So basically what you're referring to when you're talking about appointed in the sense of employees is anybody who the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Health, any of the Board of Assessors is actually appointing, as opposed to being elected like the town clerk is an elected employee. So that's kind of the distinction there.
Okay, so appointed does not mean Concom, where you appoint someone to Concom, it's that was my confusion because, like under social networking and actually throughout the guide, the policy applies to all of Berlin employees, comma, appointed. So that's where I just had some questioning as to just how that was defined. That's all.
Okay, which page are you on that, Peg? I just want to take another look at that just to
Oh,
make sure.
God, Kristen, they're all over the place. So
right.
one of
They
them
are.
is like page 8. That talks about appointed. Another one is on 9 under municipal employee. Another one is on page 10 where it talks about exemptions. 11 where it talks about applicability, et cetera, throughout
Right.
the guide.
I mean, even on page 2, it's talking
Yeah.
about how this is for elected and appointed officials in
Yep.
addition to employees.
Yeah.
So I imagine these policies are true for all the people we appoint to all the positions out there. I think there are things like, compensation and pay rates and times, obviously, if you're a volunteer position, don't take a place, but, sexual harassment would be true whether or
Correct.
not you're appointed or elected. And those are the two extremes that were just, it's pretty obvious that you're definitely going to be covered or definitely not covered if you're a volunteer
Right.
who's appointed to a committee.
So just that's where my confusion was, is what group of people were you talking to? So that's when I sent you guys questions back, I put the appointed in red. The other ones, again, were just information. Hey, can you clarify on this? But that's why I called that one out, how that was defined.
Okay. And, I know in the opener, they kind of talked generally, and I see it right here. It says the job of all town employees and elected/appointed officials. I don't know, is that something the select board wrote, or is that a carryover from a previous document? Because I really didn't touch that because that was already there. When I started.
I think that this is a carryover from probably 10 to 12 years ago and was pretty ugly and outdated then, and just became uglier and outdateder 10 to 12 years later until personnel and the outside firm got a hold of it. So it
Right.
probably
Okay.
has origins way back.
Okay. So my understanding, and I'm seeing it now, especially in light of that first paragraph. This really applies to employees. So I think that employees and elected appointed officials is where the confusion is coming in that very first paragraph. So I think perhaps what would fix it is just taking it back, calling it employee policy manual, and taking out the reference to employees and elected appointed officials. I don't know if they meant to say in that the job just generally of elected appointed officials is to provide great service. I'm not sure, but I see where you could think that makes the whole thing apply. These are really day-to-day employee matters. I mean, you're talking about hiring, firing, compensation, benefits. None of those are really things that volunteer board or committee members get. They get paid a stipend, which there's always the debate, does that make them an employee for the purposes of what's your regional retirement? It does, but not for these specific, policies themselves.
Right. That's why I just wanted to make that clear, especially under probation period where it says all newly appointed, shall be required, to complete 90-day probation period, blah, blah, blah. That's just it, Kristen. I don't want, 10 years from now when none of us are around, doing this, that somebody's going to look at this and go, wait, I'm appointed, therefore I get.
Right.
Got it. Okay. So I'll
Yeah.
fix that title and also the first page too. And I'll just go back and make sure that if there's any reference to volunteer boards and committees, that get pulled out.
Right.
Do we
Right,
have a
that's a
volunteer
good-
committee book? I think we do. Do we not?
Does what?
Do we have a volunteer handbook?
For for boards and committees?
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought so. Yeah.
But I can see how this caused a little confusion. So I got it. Okay. We'll fix that.
do we still want to do a vote to send this to legal counsel, and then we'll do another vote when it comes back and hopefully have some clarification on removing the word appointed in places where it wasn't as relevant?
Yeah, but, yeah, my motion still stands if you'd like.
Okay. Yep. We ready to vote? Peg, do you have any other questions for this?
No, it seems cleared up, so I'll just wait for the rewrite.
Yep. So I think we're approving to be able to move this on to the lawyer and some of the cleanup stuff that Peg has just talked about. Hawkins, aye.
Keep five.
Stone Eye.
Now on to snow removal tickets.
All right. I actually reached out to you, Margaret, on this because the bylaw itself basically allows enforcement against people putting snow in public right of ways, in public roads, sidewalks, what have you. But it doesn't actually define who's allowed to enforce or issue that $100 fine. So basically, I spoke with Margaret, and the intent was to have the board appoint someone to do that, whether it was Fred, whether it was a police officer. So I spoke with both Fred and I spoke with the chief. There are pluses and minuses to either. But I kind of lean more towards having the police officers do it because I just think that highway employees are not necessarily in the business of issuing citations, and the citation book that we have a space to do an other citation on is a police book. So I don't know that that's appropriate to give to highway and have them start issuing tickets from it. And I also think too, there's a little less perhaps chance of a confrontation if a police officer were to issue it, as opposed to a non, uniformed person delivering that. And of course, the process is to send letters to try to resolve it by speaking to the residents before we issue that process. But the recommendation that I would make is the process would be Fred notifies the chief that there's an issue, hopefully takes a picture, sends it over, and then the police would go and issue the citation off of that other line on the ticket book, which is a ticket book that apparently has been around for centuries that nobody really ever uses because we don't really issue parking tickets, I guess. So we may have to get more, but we have 14 tickets left. So get your snow in the road quickly. No, just kidding. So,
and I think that you're still planning that, like, if snow is in the road, the first attempt is to talk to the owner about doing it and issue a letter. And that we're not just driving around town 24 hours after a snowstorm and writing 1,000 tickets for people who have temporarily or even accidentally unknowingly put too much snow back into the roads of the public right of way.
right. This would be a situation where highway has spoken with them, letters have been sent multiple times, and the problem continues.
Kristen, you mentioned something that triggered a thought, parking tickets. I think it was at the last town meeting or maybe the one before, don't remember.
I was going to
Where
say
we approved parking tickets to be done, so if somebody's sitting in a crosswalk, somebody is parking in the center of town during, the blizzard of insert year here. So if police have the ability to issue those tickets, do we need to order more tickets?
That's what we're looking at. And we're looking into whether like Clinton Offset or who might be able to make those tickets. The books themselves, unfortunately, don't have the publisher on them, but we'll look around and figure out where we can get those made. I don't even have a ballpark on what cost would be, but that's something that we'll look into.
When we were talking about doing those parking tickets, that's when someone parked a billboard truck at the center of town, and like, how long do they do? We don't really have any rules, and so they can't do that for the next 6 months. And so we put some stuff together so that both safety, like parking in a crosswalk, and sites like that we can deal with.
Sure.
So do you want me to make a motion, Scott?
Well, I got one more question.
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it, Peg.
So Fred talks to the person continues to throw snow in the road. Eric and crew show up, give him a ticket. They go, ha, 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 I don't care. Throw more snow in the road next storm. So is that ticket just for that storm and then we have to start it again? Or because you've been flagged initially for chucking snow in the road, do you now go right to ticket number 2? Or do you go back to warning number 1 because it's a new storm?
I would think you would go to ticket number 2, but that is a
Okay.
good question. I was just looking at the way the bylaw was written. I think it was per offense, but I don't
Okay.
have it right in front of me.
Right.
Let me just actually, oh yeah, I do. Hold on, it's in here. Let me get out of here. Go back.
And if
to-
you don't pay it, so what? What happens? I'm just gonna decorate my fridge with all the tickets and see how many I can get.
Let's see. It's vague. No snow or ice shall be deposited on any public street or sidewalk from any parking lot, business, or residential driveway at any time. The penalty for violation of this bylaw shall be $100. So it does not say per offense.
Hopefully people, once they've paid the $100, won't do it again.
I would hope. I mean, this was originally adopted in 1984. It's not a new bylaw by any means, but it's been amended a few times, most recently back in June of 2020. And that was when I believe the dollar amount for a violation ticket was added, if I'm
Right.
not mistaken.
Yeah, that's
So-
when Dave Smith was around. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. I wanted
Yeah.
to be clear for Eric's folks because I don't want, you can't, yes, I can. You know, I want to get rid of this. So I just want to make sure that everybody is clear on, I whiz snow in the road, this is what happens. I whiz snow again in the road, this is what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that it would be per incident, and since the bylaw is silent as to which way it goes, I would think the board could make that vote along with appointing the person to enforce it because it is silent. So I don't know which way you want to go on that. I mean, my hope is that you do it one time and somebody isn't going to do it again.
Right. My belief is the intent of doing warning letters and talking to the homeowners is that going under a good intent sort of model where maybe the person didn't realize that there was a rule against this. And so you do the letter and you do the talking to just to like make sure that they understand that this is really a violation. And once you have one ticket, I don't think you get the benefit of the doubt the second time that you didn't know that there was a rule against throwing snow in the road. And that I think even if it's the same storm, you know, that you've been talked to, you've written a ticket, and then you then replow your driveway and throw more snow, or then do your sidewalk after you've done your driveway, throw more snow on the road, it could be another ticket. You know, I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm willing to people that didn't know, but once you have been warned and told, you're now just being a jerk. And at that point, you don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. I have no problem, like if in this winter, you know, you got a ticket and then a winter went by and there wasn't any bad snow and you did it again next year, that maybe you forgot. Again, I have no problem assuming good intent, but there's a certain point where like you're just being a jerk about it. And and the reason this bylaw exists is that throwing snow into a road can cause hazards. You could be jeopardizing people's health and well-being. And I don't know what you do when you don't pay the ticket. I know eventually there's escalations and there's small claims court and there's liens against properties. It might be that we don't ever get the money until someday your property is sold by you or your heirs. But I'd like to at least start by thinking that the people in this town are generally decent folks, and that we'd get to the point that we've gone, what, 20 plus years without entering I keep thinking 1984 is 20 years ago. We go 40 years without issuing a ticket, then we go 40 more years without issuing a ticket, and that would be great by me. But again, I think we need to authorize the police to write the tickets. And you know, it's after you've been warned a couple of times you get a ticket, and after that you might just get tickets.
Right. And there are two options I see if someone doesn't pay a ticket. One, they actually, if they have any outstanding tickets with the town, they might not be allowed to renew a permit or license. So that's how we've done it with businesses in the past. There is a Mass General law, and I'd have to look into it, that basically says for certain types of offenses, You either can't renew a license, and there are some, this may not fall under it, but there are some that it can be tacked onto your taxes. And I'd have to look and see if that's the case, and I can do that.
Well, couldn't you also say that, well, like the dog license, if you don't get your dog license, you can't vote.
No, we want people to be able to vote.
That may not be a
Yeah.
big deal to some people, but
Yeah,
Yeah. I can do
I
a
would
little.
lean
digging
more
and see.
towards it gets whacked on your taxes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the majority of the people in town don't have a business, don't have a
Right.
license. So what?
Right.
But all of a sudden, if my 100, 200 starts going on my already high tax bill, I'm gonna be pretty peeved because as Scott said, I'm just
Right.
being stupid and I'm hurting myself,
Mm.
there's no public statement made. It's, hey, congratulations, you increased your tax bill by $200.
so would you like I will make the motion to approve the police to authorize the police to give the tickets to people who put snow in the road. And also that it would be per incident.
Agreed, second.
I think we've had our discussion then, so I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
Great. Annual report status. So last week was the deadline to get in reports for the annual report. And so how's it going?
It's going well. I know we've gotten most of them in, and Mary's done a lot of reach out to the folks that were stragglers. We also have been reaching out to printers to try to see what we can do in terms of cost reduction for printing the books. And I will tell you, the quotes run the gamut. One came in at $4,500, and I was like, what? Because we talked about basically doing 380 books. Mary went and looked at how many books were left over, how many books were purchased just for this, for the 2021 period. And it looks like that's going to be a good number to go with. We talked to Assabet. Unfortunately, they said with the thickness of the book, they aren't able to do perfect bound, and they don't recommend stapling or spiral bound because it might just come apart. Or no, I'm sorry, they can't do spiral bound, I forget, but they basically said you need to go to a printer for this, which kind of makes sense why other cities and towns use a printer. We did get a quote in, I believe it was from King Quality Printing of closer to 1,500, I believe, which was far better and more in our price range than the other ones we've been getting in. But I believe Mary has also reached out to Clinton Offset and a few other places and is waiting to hear back. So it is moving along well.
King isn't that the one that we have been using?
Yeah, it's the one up in Lowell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah,
it's
for
amazing
20
how
for
much.
more than 20 years, yes.
Oh, okay. So the
Maybe-
reduction in books helps too.
Maybe that's why we've been using them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It never hurts every now and again to refresh the quote though and go out there and just see if anyone's gotten cheaper, but it looks like people have gotten more expensive.
Right.
So
Great. I think we'll keep this agenda item sort of on the calendar until we have all of them in. And you have someone who's sort of helping assemble these into a book that can go to the printer, correct? Like you and Mary are not laying this out.
Mary, there's a senior person. Is it Peggy
Yep,
that's doing that?
Lori Fairbay
Lori
is
Fairbay.
back
Yeah.
on the job as a senior work-off expert with many years of newspaper layout experience behind her.
No, I thought so. I was just confirming that and a chance to give a shout out to her as
Oh,
well.
no,
for
I'm
helping.
thrilled. She's the best.
Yeah.
Good. We don't have anything under new business tonight. So it sort of brings us to board questions, comments, and liaison updates. Chris?
Let's see, I've got the Council on Aging met on the 31st of January. They've had the van serviced again, this time for an alignment and an oil change. The Council on Aging had, along with the seniors, have several different events coming up. One of them is Berlin's Got Talent at BMS. I think they're looking at the end of May. Something called Piano Man at the 1870 Town Hall that may be in June. Something called Clara Barton at the South Common, which I assume would be in better weather. The Council on Aging will provide rides to these events with a reservation. They also discussed virtual trips to various international areas. There you go, Scott. And interest in checking out programs at the Worcester Art Museum. Council on Aging is interested in having home day this year. And they may have a grab and go or an in-person luncheon in May. Then I also attended, I guess it was a technology meeting. I may have been the only one who contacted Paul Mera from the schools, who's their technology coordinator, to question about hybrid meetings, how the school's going to do it, or are they going to do it? So he invited me to this meeting by Zoom, and it was with Carol Costello, Mike Totman, Jess Diglaberti. And I didn't learn a lot about hybrid because I don't think that they really know what they're going to do about hybrid. But they did ask me to connect by email Carol Costello with Judy Mills from the seniors and Victoria from Council on Aging, because Carol wanted to introduce herself as the new superintendent and wanted to also talk about the budget a little bit. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about the budget as these numbers become clearer to everyone. I think I told Kristen that she'd be interested in doing the coffee talk on April 20th, along with everybody else who may have a budget or a warrant article. And I didn't know whether we might want to have a separate meeting with just the schools to give out information. It's just throwing a possibility out there. So I did connect everyone that wanted connected, and I let Carol know that I would be happy to remain the liaison to the schools for anything she wanted to get out to the select board. She can also contact Kristen too, I'm sure. But I just wanted to let you know that I had attended this meeting. That's it.
I've been sort of reading and corresponding more than actually going to meetings, but Historical Society, because their meetings tend to sometimes be during the day. But they're working on their looking at the grants, the historic preservation grants that they've been talking about. That's been getting more detail on it because I think it's due in a couple months. I also had a surprisingly fun conversation with the chair of the Boylston Select Board, where we had a wide ranging, but mostly I reached out to him to just get a sense of their thoughts, feelings, and plans about school budgets. As we know that town pays for about 2/3 of the school budget. We pay for about 1/3 because that's about the ratio of clients work stuff. Students from Berlin to Boylston, and so any sort of giant increase on us is also on their end as well. And no resolution there, but it did beg a couple of questions. I think I ran one of them by you, Kristen. Is just like, what happens if one town passes the budget as requested and one town cuts a reduced version of that budget, so we can understand what happens if only one of us cuts it and the other town decides that they're fine with it. And do you get an answer to that? I don't think I asked you that long ago yet, Kristen, so it wouldn't be surprised if you don't have the answer yet.
There's actually the possibility of a 2-town meeting. And you could get to that point if it can't be agreed upon.
Okay. Yeah, I don't, that's a new one for me.
Yep.
So I haven't had a chance to get an answer to that one. I don't, I'll
Yep.
do a little searching on that.
Yep, and then his and my conversation also just included weird things like they're getting ready to pass CPA funding and structure and other stuff. And so we talked about some of it. It's actually a really nice, and there are a lot of things that aren't, who would surprise a relatively small town that is also that we share borders with, we would have a lot of issues in common with. I think they're envious might not be the right word, but hearing all the good things our Conservation Commission does and actively looks for lands that to preserve and how to think long-term to keep the rural character of this town as long as it can was nice to think that we definitely do a lot of right things here in this town. But I hope that's the
Who's on the board now? The select board?
I'm even at this moment spacing on his name, never mind the names of the other members. But he is finishing up his first term, just as I'm finishing up my first term. And so it also, it was neat to share some of those just stories of, you know, what our spouses are feeling about it and what has it done to, like, you know, home availability stuff and how much you can walk around town aimlessly and walk your dog and still get another and not be stopped 2 or 3 times. I think because we're smaller and my home is sort of a little bit more out there, I don't really get stopped when I'm walking my dog around. I tend to wave hi to a lot of folks, but it was an interesting conversation. Peg?
I got a page. All right. Concom, they talked about potential Earth Day. Nothing finalized except that it'll be on April 23rd, which is Earth Day Day for that. So more details to come to make the town look pretty on that day. Was also asked by a member of Concom about how to set up an advisory board. There is or has been some discussion amongst the infamous folks in town regarding the rail trail. And what do we do with it? You know, do we push towards it again? Do we not push towards it again? Do we loop into what Hudson's doing and see what, you know, they're up to? Do we talk to Clinton? So their ask was, how do you set up an advisory committee? They don't want it to be part of Concom. They want it to be separate from them, but they also talked about having this advisory board having an ability to write grants. So I don't know how that gets in. I mean, I can't imagine that you just have a random committee with no ties to anyone or any group board in town being just able to be like, hey, let's get a grant and, you know, understand if it's a reimbursement grant or everything that goes into it. And then of course, I'm sure our friend June would tell us that there's a boatload of tracking that needs to be done. So I told them that I would ask because I haven't a clue. So, you know, Kristen, if there's documentation that you can point me to, that I can point them to. They had also asked if CPA money could be used for the rail trail. But given that it's February and town vote is just a couple months away, and there is no advisory committee, I don't think that they'd be in a position really to stand up and say, you know, I want $1 bazillion from CPA because nothing's been defined. You know, it might be next year's ask, you know, for CPA, because there's already 3 items on the books before, or that may come before a town vote. So they're just trying to get organized and looking for a little direction. So if there's anything that you can share, point me to previous towns that have done it, then I will gladly pass it along for that one.
The previous rail trail committee was voted on as article number 38 in the May 3rd, 2016 town meeting.
Oh, okay.
Take a look at that.
And the report.
And to be fair, I went to the town website and Google and searched for rail trail because I knew there was something on the website because I had a resident ask me this question a couple of weeks ago. And so
Okay.
I'm
not think
looking
that I
at
have
it. It's
articles
online,
from-
right? It's online right now, Scott. I'm looking at it.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the bylaws. Do committees have to be created by town meeting? Because I'm
No.
used to the select board having that ability.
I think we appointed the members of the last rail trail committee.
Yeah,
You did.
and we could pull up the looking at that article and what it said, because I don't think
Okay.
it was written into the bylaws, because if it's written to the bylaws, that means it still exists, because we've not pulled it, and we could actually just reform that, because it was called the Berlin Rail Trail Advisory Committee.
But the
It is-
committee itself was established by town meeting.
Yes, it
Only
was
as
established by
a
town meeting to write a
concession.
report that it has done, and that disbanded after writing the report that came out in
Oh, okay.
2019.
2018. Kristen, I'll send the board it as a BCC.
Okay, thank you.
They're also going to talk to Senator Kennedy and Representative Kilcoyne as well. Because I'm thinking, you work in numbers, you benefit by, one or two towns banding together than one town kind of trying to run with the flag down the road. But I'll point them there to start and tell them that there's more to come, on this as to whatever vetting you're going to use for who gets on, who doesn't get on. Do you do a mission statement? Do you do a goal? I would assume so, because it would just be, to me, it'd be kind of silly to have an advisory committee to be like, hey, so you
Right.
want to discuss it, without any power oomph
Mhm.
behind it, for that, so. All right,
Well, and if we did reform it using the 2018 study as a starting point, things have changed. One of the reasons why it didn't go much further at that point is the state was more interested in trails coming out of Boston as opposed to sort of central Mass.
Yeah.
But the belief was, and from what I read is true, is that as those get connected and completed, they want to reach further west, and
Right.
they're reaching out where Hudson and Clinton are both doing things, Hudson and Clinton are both doing things on rail trails. And so we at some point will be the place where that the state might invest money to do
Right.
something significant.
well, because there was also talk, I know that during the previous rail trail discussion, the cry was not in my backyard, have a trail, but don't have it go by my back window. So there was talk at conservation about if there's conservation nearby, that, maybe you scoot the trail onto conservation, so it's not in my backyard, discussion, and then come back around.
I thought the
So-
state actually did, there was a document I saw at one point that actually that had routes through Berlin. Sort of where the rail line was, and where parts of that exist and don't exist, and which ones you could build on and couldn't build on, and just a general summary, because again, the state was beginning to start looking at
Yeah.
our part of the state as a place where the next sort of stage of rail trail should go.
Well, the
Doesn't mean
thing
we have
is
to follow
too,
those, but those are
yeah,
own.
and the thing is too, if you think back to the rail trail chat, it was, we're gonna put them where the railroads were. And it's like, well, you can't pick them up, you can't pick the rails up because of all the crap that's in them. And, who's gonna take all the steel, and who's gonna do all the work, and is it gonna be volunteers? So I'm gonna guess that, again, you want to reduce the chatter that's going
Yep.
on and all the misinformation that's going on about there, because misinformation generally becomes
Yep.
real information.
Mm.
So they're gonna have their work cut out for them, but
Well, We
I
were
will-
approached at one point in my time on the select board that the town buying, like one of the private companies that owns one of the rail lines, even though the state has some lien is not quite the right word, but conservation easement type thing on them,
mm,
whether the town would buy them, and we chose not to because we didn't want to force where it would be, because we now own the lines, and the cost was too high. But it's also learned that the cost of sort of turning them into something nicer, that someone come along and remove the rail lines and some of the cross ties for free, because the rail lines are iron that can be, forged and sold. And so, of course, that was, again, 2, 3, 4 years ago. So, Chris?
Thank you. I was just going to say that maybe it would be a good idea to start from the report that was published by the last group. And maybe if this does come to some kind of a fruition, we could put it on an agenda.
Yeah.
as I said, right now, they're just exploring, they're just trying to
Yep.
figure it out, so that's all their ask to me was to
Right.
figure out how to put an advisory group together, and I went, great question, no clue.
Yep.
Therefore, my ask to you. And then one more thing about Concom, this past Monday, or is it today? Today's Monday. Yeah, today's Monday. I think they were finally doing a walkthrough with Verizon guy for the cell tower on Snake Hill. So it had been postponed from a couple weeks ago. I can reach out to Carolyn and find out what is that. So Kristen, a question to you, because again, here's another one of these. I'm going to make a statement, therefore it's going to become true, and it may not become true. If Verizon says, yes, we want a tower on insert address here, and they say, we'll pay you $20 for lease of the hill, who gets that money?
The town,
Well,
That's
I think you're
general fund
talking,
receipts.
the town.
What was
would.
that?
Right, that's general fund receipts. So that, unless June thinks otherwise, my interpretation would be that's miscellaneous, non-recurring revenue because it's something that's unanticipated. Also, we'd have to enter into a lease with them, which is considered acquisition or disposition of property and requires town meeting vote.
All right, I would just keep an ear to the ground on that one, because there's some discussion of, well, hey, if it's going on a piece of conservation land, then I
Right.
get money. So.
right, and even though it goes to the general fund, nothing stops the town from allocating that exact
Right.
dollar amount to the Conservation Commission for expenses.
Okay.
Right, it could be
Right, but-
reappropriated through an article, but I don't believe it's an automatic pass-through to conservation.
not.
That's what
I
you're
agree.
asking. Okay,
I don't believe it's automatic, but I believe we could do a vote that allocates, for the life of that lease. We will try to, of course, future select boards could change that, or future town meetings, but
Yeah.
we can at least start with the right intent.
All right, which is fine, and Scott, I understand that. I just want people to make sure that it goes to town fund first, and
Mhm.
then we decide, proverbial
Mhm.
we,
Mhm.
decide where it goes compared to my land, my money,
Right.
type of thing, and it skips over us.
Right.
So, all right. Energy, Kristen, I just let the chairman know that you'd be in touch with them from our chat last week.
I did fill out the form and send it back to them, signed last week, so they should be all set to go.
Awesome. All right. So the next fun one is the Woo Sox. So head of marketing guy, Eric, reached out to me, good guy, and wanted to start talking about a takeover, Berlin takeover, one of the nights for a Woo Sox game. So he gave me a couple dates in April, and I'm thinking, no, that's too cold, probably to do. Also gave a date of September 2nd, which I think is Labor Day. So that's like kind of sort of a last hurrah that people go away. So he offered a couple other dates in mid-September, the 12th and the 13th. So said probably, maybe, logically, that kind of seems by process of elimination like the right one. And then his question, so I'll work with Rec, and I don't think they're called Link anymore. I think they have a new acronym, but I don't know what it is. To talk to parents and kind of start seeing if there is some momentum to do this, and if families, anybody in town wanted to participate. I will say that Boylston had 500 go last year, so a little healthy competition. Scott, maybe you did talk to your friend over in Boylston about that. Eric did say, or did ask, is that if we could let him know of a nonprofit in town, because what they will do is that they will provide a certain percentage of the sales of the tickets to a nonprofit. And I told him it's not my decision. It's a board decision. So I don't know, the ones that kind of came to the top of my head, and I'm probably missing a boatload of them, is Rec, I'm thinking is nonprofit, veterans are nonprofit, food pantry, seniors.
I think you have to be
Right.
a nonprofit.
You got what?
Right.
Might
You have to be a
be-
501c3 federally recognized organization.
Oh, that
So like
wouldn't be
Berlin Arts
correct.
and Cultural is, but like Friends of the Library, I do not think are.
Okay,
The food pantry is,
Right.
but it would be, but so is like, I think that the name of this here, what's the Autistic Services Organization at the Rotary
oh, yeah.
profit? Both Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are nonprofits.
Okay,
Boys and Girls Clubs are nonprofits.
I think
And so
that- I think
there
the
are some
food
good ones in
pantry-
town. But I think Food
Okay.
Pantry is the one that's closest to the select board, and I think goes to goes to people in need in town. And so we're looking at
Okay.
something that really is a need in town. That is, it is one of my go-tos, so.
so do you want me to tell him food pantry? Because what he offered to do is that once we can lock in a date and identify a group, that the WooSox will put together flyers, which will kind of like help us so that we can, have the principal over at BMS approve them and we can shove them in kids' backpacks for that way. And maybe that will help folks to say, yeah, I'll go to that. So do we want to tell them food pantry or,
Yeah,
okay.
I think so. I mean,
Right.
not.
Right.
This is what-
And just to give Scott, you and Chris a heads up, generally when they do town takeover, Kristen, probably you too, they bring the officials on the field and we have to throw the first pitch. So get your arms out there, kiddos, and start practicing.
Well,
Who you pointing at?
I was gonna say, that's the problem with this, because like, by the time we get to September, we'll at least, even assuming I run and get reelected, we will have rotated the chair to somebody else.
Oh, no,
Okay.
it's, no, it's not the chair. It's the board.
Right.
So it doesn't
I've-
matter. Yeah, you too.
No,
Kristen.
no. The
so
nonprofit should throw
we-
out the first pitch.
Right.
That's how we did it in Leicester. Leicester had a
Right.
takeover day last year. Leicester, obviously, so close to Worcester. And they had the nonprofit throw out the first pitch, which I
See?
thought was
Oh, there
very
we
nice.
go.
I guess I gotta tell Mary
we-
McKelvey.
we have
to get
one
around
constant
to it. And
We
Val
do as a wet,
Muldoon.
as a wet blanket, have my constant unease of doing the marketing for a for-profit company. And that we're sort of marketing people to go and spend money at a for-profit venture. Which I have unease at doing, but I
Yeah.
get the spirit thing and won't stay in the way, but
No, we went through this too. So we picked a nonprofit in town called Deja Nu, and they were a furniture store, but they did like raise money for diabetes dogs for kids and, adaptive vans and things like that. And we actually, so we might want to talk about this, is we had them do a lot of the marketing. And the town basically threw it up on the website. And, it's sort of like, because it does benefit a nonprofit, they're in town, there's that component, but I know what you mean, Scott. We went round and round about the exact same thing.
I think what Peg needs to do is to work with people on what the date is and
Yep.
then just
Yep.
update. us. And
well,
we'll.
I think that the
my
date of
tickets
September,
go home.
the
12th
date
or
of September
13th.
12th or 13th works the best, because April is not just for me. Weather might not as much be an issue as it is. It's right before town meeting. And so all of us are going to be trying to get people's attention on going to town meeting and all the logistics of town meeting and other stuff. And I don't want us and even town members to be overly distracted by other stuff unless we plan on holding town meeting at the WooSox meeting, at the WooSox game in between innings, like, okay, between inning 1 and 2, we're going to vote on articles 1 through 7.
I like
Very
that.
good. All right, so before I voluntold food pantry, let me talk to Mary McKell first and make
Yep,
sure that
yep.
she's good, because they may say, you know what, we're in good shape and
Mhm.
we don't need it. So I don't want to throw them out there if they're good and truly somebody else could use it. And I was hoping Veterans was here tonight, because I was going to ask him how many veterans we have in town, because they also honor the veterans of the
Right.
town before the game too. So
It's
it could
really
be
nice.
just a name and picture only. If somebody's not capable, or it could be we walk them out on the field, how cool would that be? So I will find that out as well. All right. So lots more to come. Start working on your arms. You've got fair notice in several months. The ADA listing, we are chugging and cooking with some serious gas on that. Some of the work, Victoria had a great suggestion. Maybe give it to a gentleman in town who's very handy and can do some of the lighter construction stuff. Meaning the coat hook is up here and the coat hook needs to come down here. So instead of, unscrewing the coat hook and having to spackle and paint, you know what? We run up to Lowe's and we buy another set of coat hooks and well, we put them there. So now we have 1 set and 2 sets of coat hooks. So I took a walk through town offices today with our senior work-off person just to go through and kind of like point out everything that needs to be done. A lot of it truly is rinse and repeat of handles in the bathroom doors. Think about it. You just have that little switch, that you lock the door with. Well, there needs to be another handle on it because if somebody has a disability, they're not going to be able to grab and do that. We looked at dispensers, the paper towel dispensers. Moore's has been kind enough to say, go ahead, you move them. We understand you need to move them. But then we looked at them today and realized, well, no one has a key to open them. So Fred's going to look to see if he has a key, to open them because of course the screws are inside and don't want to break it. So that's moving along. Fred also provided the name of a plumber that he has worked with in town. So Kristen, I think that will take care of the issue of licensed, insured and W-2 with the town before. So I
Perfect.
placed a call waiting for that. Those, and again, those items aren't too detailed. It's wrapping the pipes underneath. And if you go into any of the bathrooms and hit the water to wash your hands, it stays on for about 2 seconds. It needs to stay on for about 10. So bathrooms downstairs, upstairs, second floor, and town barn as well need to be done. There's a few protruding objects, which I kind of laughed. One of them was a first aid kit over in the town barn. It sticks out too far. So we'll need to figure out what to do with that one so it doesn't stick out as far. And then obviously all expenses and labor will be tracked. Kristen, I'm sure I'm going to have to meet with you in June where it is senior work off. So it's truly not, hey, you do the work, I cut you a check for $20. It's, I do the work and you take $20 off my taxes. So I don't know how that will need to be figured out. And the same thing with the a lot of the stuff, whether it's spackle, whether it's paint, whether it's piece of wallboard. Fred, of course, was like, no, we have that. And I'm like, no, we have the money for that in the grant. So if you have to go buy a hook for the door, go buy a hook for the door. And don't
Need the receipt. Yep.
and get a receipt and get
Yeah.
a receipt. So we've got $8,000 to spend. With the senior work off, not really with money going out the door and limited items for plumber man to do. We should have some buffer. The doors, when you first walk in the town offices, they don't stay open long enough, to try and get in. So that just might be a little adjust on the door so that the door stays open. Fred said that he would look into an automatic door. I told him absolutely no rush. I don't know what's involved. I don't know the cost. It could be ADA grant that we're going to write this year, where we can say we've taken care of these items. Now we need to get people in the door. So, he thinks the doors are fine, that it really is just an electrical component that can go into the door with a little switch, that you hit to open the door. So that is going on. And Assabet guy. John Assabet guy. I reached out to him. He said probably over the next week or so, he might be able to give some dates. I asked him for a couple because I'm going to need to involve Fred and Mr. Hanks to do the walkthrough. Kristen, obviously, you're more than invited, but I know that you've got some other things to do. So we got to figure out where they are. And then I signed up for Read Across America on March 2nd. At BMS. That's it.
I was just going to say on the ADA grant too, many thanks to Victoria, who's working with PEG on the ADA grant. And we did get speaking of grants, we got our healthy vending machine on Friday, and it is in the hallway of the municipal offices, oddly between the bathrooms, which sounds weird, but there was a perfect spot for it. So please feel free to check it out. You swipe your card, all kinds of sandwiches, different foods in there, drinks. It's really cool. And they are at a discounted price because of the grant.
Yeah, I was in the town hall today and ceiling guy was there putting the tiles back up and he saw it and went, "Hey, how fresh is this food?" I said, "It's very fresh. The item just came in." So he was all excited about that.
And they come
Okay.
Tuesdays and Fridays to restock.
Okay. All right, those are all my updates. I'll keep you posted on Blue Sox. Maybe we can have an outside meeting where we play catch. Mhm.
Are there any other questions, comments, or updates? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Because we do not have executive committee tonight.
So moved.
Seconded.
Great,
Can you
thank
guys-
you everyone
can
for
you guys
attending
hear me?
tonight. And we will see you, Hawkins, aye.
Keep I.
Stone Eye.